First of all, I have what you call fuck you money. And if you have fuck you money, you don't say fuck you. What's the point of having the fuck you money? You're wasting it. Like, you're wasting the position. Like, someone said to me, like, why do you like sports cars so much? Like, how many cars do you have? A bunch of cars. Like, because if I was a kid and I said, hey, if I was that crazy, rich, famous guy, like, I would want to have a bunch of cool cars. Like, so I would do that. Like, because not everybody gets to do that. Like, if you're the person that gets to do that, you're kind of supposed to do it. See, with Rumble, though, they're getting bigger people over there now. And as they get bigger and bigger people, they made a big play for me when all that shit was going down with me. Yeah, they offered me $100 million.
And they went for
to go over to Rumble, but Spotify never did anything. They stayed with me the entire. Watched it on X. I probably thought I'm saying X now.
Yeah, good for you.
I feel politically correct. Like when I call a transgender person a girl, she. Like, you like that? How I did that? I said she. That's Monkeypox one. God damn it! I know I saved it. If you want, I can find it. I saved it on my phone because I was like, this is just so bonkers. This is gonna be a problem. I'm not going to find it. If you see if you can find it. It's got to be out there.
When you're sitting at the top, it's easy to start thinking the winning streak will never end. And honestly, some people almost had a right to believe that, because the levels they were operating on didn't even look real. One of those rare few is Joe Rogan, the dude who went from grinding comedy clubs to calling UFC fights to transforming into the powerhouse behind one of the biggest podcasts the world has ever seen. The man behind the JRE didn't just build a platform, he built an empire. He went from a kid hustling in Boston to becoming one of the most influential voices in modern culture. Period. But lately, that iron grip he had over the podcast world, it's been slipping, and he's starting to look less like the unstoppable king of the internet, and more like someone watching his own throne shake, while the criticism keeps stacking up. Now he's catching heat nonstop over shaky decisions, wild takes, and ideas he pushed that he might be low-key regretting today. And instead of owning the fallout, he's been pointing fingers everywhere except at himself, which only makes the backlash hit even harder. But this is exactly why people are turning on Joe Rogan now. Because for years, his influence wasn't just big, it was unmatched. He had pull that most media giants could only dream of.
I don't have the right to tell my 14-year-old daughter she has to carry this baby. You understand
that?
To
look that woman in the eye who was the born of a...
Understand that? That's a 14-year-old child.
I know.
If a 14-year-old child gets... You say that they have to carry that baby?
I don't think two wrongs make a right. I don't think murder. I don't think murder is an answer to. I don't think murder fixes.
What if we're talking about an abortion when the fetus, like literally, it's like 6 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 days? What if she just turned positive just now? Positive for pregnancy.
I just disagree that.
What if it just happened today?
You can like draw a line on when.
You can't.
Like, once
So
life
you
has
can't
begun,
do
I don't
at
think
the
you draw
very
lines.
moment.
I would lay it out like this. I would say it is wrong to intentionally kill innocent human life. Abortion intentionally kills innocent human life. Therefore, abortion is wrong.
Or your special kicks it and you start selling out giant theaters.
Dude, let's go, baby.
Let's get a little in your life.
CNN pulls around 400,000 to maybe 582,000 viewers during primetime, while a single episode of the Joe Rogan Experience pulls around 11 million downloads on Spotify alone. That's not a gap, that's a canyon. With numbers like that, it made perfect sense when Rogan locked in that massive $100 million Spotify deal.
Look at the building. The building's blown outward. Whoa. Like, it's blown out. Now, I'm obviously not a fucking bomb expert, but I talked to one.
You should see your ex.
He can't stop himself!
All right. Keep going. Need some levity.
If you look at... it did need levity. If you look at the images of the building... If you look at the images of... I'm not a bomb expert.
Though plenty of insiders swear the real number was closer to $200 million. And when that exclusivity deal finally ran out, another major platform popped up ready to throw a fresh bag his way, desperate to attach themselves to one of the biggest names in podcasting. Joe didn't have to do anything wild to rise up. All he did was sit down and talk to people he thought were interesting, and somehow that turned him into the face of one of the most powerful platforms of the entire century. And after a while, he knew exactly how valuable that seat was, especially once Spotify put him in that exclusive lane. But let's keep it real, his show was never loved by everybody. It always had those goofy quirks and running jokes that made it easy to roast. Back then though, most of the jokes came from fans, and it was all lighthearted fun. Nobody thought anything serious about it. Everything flipped once the show shifted from the vibe of a dude who eats elk meat, lifts kettlebells, and kickboxes in his spare time, into something way more political, way more intense, and way more polarizing. Suddenly, it felt like he wasn't just talking anymore. He was trying to reshape how people think, and that energy changed the whole room. Once that perception kicked in, the balance snapped. Folks who used to chill with his content started tapping out, saying they couldn't even sit through an episode anymore. You've got people saying, man, he used to be fun. Now he's just a boring hack. That's wild to hear when you remember how entertaining he used to be.
Talking about this immigrant issue, and they either don't have kids or they don't think it could happen to their kids. Their idea is, hey, shouldn't have fucking come over here. You get those kind of people. Broke the law. Shouldn't have fucking come over here if you could. You didn't want to get your kids separated. If you were in the presence of a woman who came over here from Guatemala and she's poor and she's starving and they're taking her baby away and she's wailing and screaming from a primal place in her DNA that the one thing she loves more than anything is being taken away. A baby. Yeah. If that doesn't freak you the fuck out, you're not a part of the team, man.
And now, some people legit say his podcast is one of the most dangerous and toxic shows out right now. Whether that's true or just internet exaggeration, the shift in public sentiment is real, and it didn't happen overnight. When you look at how Joe Rogan went from tolerated to hated, his fall can really be traced through 4 major stages, each one pushing him deeper into controversy. The first big moment came when people started seeing him as a major booster for the so-called intellectual dark web, bringing on names like Jordan Peterson, Eric Weinstein, Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, and plenty more thinkers who built their own platforms after stopping by his studio. At first, Joe was thrown off by being labeled part of this so-called movement, acting like he wasn't trying to link up with anybody or push any agenda.
Let's just talk about the immigration thing. The way it looks is horrific. When you're just arresting people in front of their kids and just normal, regular people that have been here for 20 years, that everybody who has a heart can't get along with that.
No.
Everybody who has a heart sees that and goes, that can't be right. That can't be right. That can't be the only way to do this.
Right.
Because you have to think, look, yeah, we have to have a border. Yes, it should have been secure. Yes, they should make sure you know who everybody is before they get in.
Yeah.
But when people been here for 20 years, like, come on, man. That's crazy. Like, let's find a way. If they've been productive members of society for 20 years, no criminal record, they worked the entire time, they paid taxes, find them a pathway to citizenship. Find a way where you can do this thing that you want to do, which is keep terrorists and cartel members from getting across the border with drugs that kill 100,000 people a year. Okay, but also have a fucking heart. Because if you don't, you're not going to get anybody on your side.
He even tried to brush it off, all while still showing up in the middle of the whole thing. And yeah, some folks were salty about it. Joe admitted he liked some of those people and found them interesting, but he kept pushing back hard on the idea that he was some kind of conservative voice, especially given where he stands on different issues. But dudes like Dave Rubin were convinced that Joe was shifting the whole online landscape just by giving certain people a seat on his platform. Still, the real problem wasn't just those guests pulling up to the studio, it was how being labeled as part of an intellectual movement changed the way Joe carried himself on the mic. Back in the day, Joe used to openly say he didn't know everything. He was just a curious dude asking questions. But after hearing people hype him up nonstop as some kind of higher thinker, he started buying into that narrative.
If you're working for Israel, you don't get protected. We had Jonathan Pollard. He went to jail for 25 years or whatever.
But unrelated, right?
Understood. But
this is one particular operation.
It was if it was an intelligence operation, the question we should be asking is what part of the U.S. intelligence system was he working for? Was he working for,
But don't you think that's an effective strategy for controlling politicians? Getting them involved in sex scandals? I mean, that's always been one of the worst things that can happen to a politician. Look at Monica Lewinsky. A very simple one. Consensual, inappropriate sexual relationship between a president and a staffer, and it almost takes down the presidency. It causes him to get impeached.
And once that ego slipped in, his interview skills took a serious hit. Some episodes now feel like he's talking at people instead of with them, like the one with former Navy SEAL Sean Ryan, where he basically ran the whole conversation by himself. People started saying, man, Rogan doesn't even listen anymore. He skips jokes, ignores guests, and keeps repeating the same tired talking points. And that's the part that hurts longtime listeners the most. They remember when he let guests breathe, when he didn't treat himself like the smartest person in the room. Critics say the show used to be a playground for open dialogue and real curiosity. Now it feels like a watered-down version of what it used to be. But this is just one slice of the whole mess surrounding him. Because on top of how he's been treating his guests, the rise of his show as a massive media powerhouse opened the door for people he once would have side-eyed to suddenly get invited on. At the same time, plenty of people who could have brought real heat and made the show actually entertaining again are getting pushed to the sidelines just because they don't line up with Joe's views anymore.
Rogan endorsing Donald Trump. This just after Elon Musk made the case for 45 during his 2.5-hour sit-down interview on Rogan's podcast today. So 2 major endorsements, Megyn Kelly and Joe Rogan at Monday night.
But now
I always got more publicity than other people, and it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe. Maybe
He said a lot of wild shit, and then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild.
He's been getting dragged nonstop by Gavin Newsom, who keeps poking at him after Joe refused to bring him on to talk face-to-face. Even Newsom's whole team has been poking at him online, trying to bait Joe into a debate with lines like, "Joe Rogan is a snack-sized podcaster who can't stop talking about me, but is too scared to have me on and let his audience hear the truth."
Measles included, speaking of the current thing,
which
that's
is
a controversy.
an infection that everyone got when I was a kid. And what happened was you'd get sick for a few days and then you'd be immune for life.
Yep.
And they're making it look like everyone's dying from measles. Like, no, if you're dying from measles, you're sick. You're already compromised, which is exactly what happened with COVID, where 90+% of the people who died had 4+ comorbidities. Jesus Christ.
Which is why it was such a red pill for me, because I was like literally an ultra marathon runner that was going to the gym like 3 hours a day. Like, I need natural immunity. I already have natural immunity. Go fuck yourselves.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do?
They even compared him to Donald Trump, saying he often chickens out. And let's be real, for his fan base, that look is terrible, because just a few years ago, Joe would have argued with anyone who had a different opinion. Now it feels like he only wants safe conversations, and the show is suffering for it. Old Joe would have had Mom Donnie, Newsom, AOC, and Snoop Dogg all in the same week, mixing wild personalities together like it was nothing. Now it's mostly the same rotation of wealthy friends and hand-picked comedy hitters, and the energy just isn't the same. Even worse, some of the guests he does bring on are the exact type of people he used to warn everyone about. And this didn't just happen overnight either. His longtime friend Duncan Trussell even warned him that the platform he built could be used by bad actors if he wasn't careful.
If I win, I do the programming on your show for a week.
No. That's worth a lot of money. You can f- off. You can f- off. We're booked up months and months in advance.
You were so confident until just now.
No.
Pick a month, few months off.
That's ridiculous to flip a coin on that. There's no chance.
I mean, what would be?
Because then you'd make me have Listen, the whole reason why this show works is because I talk to people that I want to talk to.
Nothing that I can do.
There's nothing that you could give me that would be worth a week of programming on the show. What are you going to give me? You'd have to
day of programming.
You'd have to give me a spectacular amount of money.
I sent you a.
But that's the only way I would be, like, the only way, like, if you ever put a monetary equivalent to that, it would have to be a spectacular amount.
But now, some folks think he's getting pulled into the pockets of elites, especially when he's out here getting cozy with someone like Peter Thiel, the billionaire co-founder of Palantir, a company backed by intelligence agencies and seen by many as straight up dangerous. Thiel had been critiqued on Joe's own show before, with guests like Tim absolutely tearing into him. Yet when Thiel came on, Joe was acting super friendly, nodding along to everything like he didn't have a single question or challenge ready. Dude was allowed to push whatever message he wanted with zero pushback, and that rubbed a whole lot of people the wrong way. After that episode dropped, a lot of Joe's loyal listeners, people who defended him for years, felt straight up disrespected. Folks were posting comments like, "I've watched every single one of the first 1,822 JRE episodes. This is the first time I actually feel insulted after watching one."
I just told you, I'm not afraid to go. I'm punching Joe Rogan. Okay, that son of a bitch not used to that, and he's going to dismiss it. He's going to laugh it off. I mean, tough guy, all that, but he's going to have me on. I don't know.
You would have done it.
Have you had Gavin Newsom on your phone?
No, he's been taunting me, trying to get me to have him on. Why?
I don't know, because he's interesting. You think he's
interesting? He's interesting as like a sociology experiment. Like if you're a psychologist.
Another person said Joe just lost all credibility, and that vibe spread fast. But out of all the questionable guests he's brought on recently, the one he might regret the most is the former president. These days, Joe acts like he believes he got played by Donald, and he's been hinting at that regret more and more. Back before the last election, Joe made massive waves when he openly endorsed Trump, something nobody expected from a comedian and UFC commentator who always claimed to just be exploring ideas. Trump and his VP both went on JRE, while Kamala Harris declined, and Joe later explained his reasoning during a long conversation with Elon Musk. But a lot of people felt it was wild that he took such a public political stance when he used to say he didn't want that kind of responsibility.
Renegade conservative.
Oh, right. That's what it was.
Pro-gay rights, pro-women's rights, pro-choice, pro-marijuana, pro-universal health care, pro-universal basic income. Like, what else do I have to do? Like, what other things am I? Oh, pro-Second Amendment. He must be right.
Yeah. Well, Joe, you're off the range. You can't just have... What do you think? You can have a
guns.
series of thoughts that don't all lock in? What,
well,
you
have
stupid?
to be in
Come
a
on,
pattern. You have to be in the patterns on things would lead someone to realize I'm definitely not a right-wing person.
The thing is that they have owned the narrative for so long
that they think they can still get away with it.
Yes.
Yes.
And what's happening is now it's shifting.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by I think we're starting to win. And I don't mean it win like we're going to destroy these people. I mean, I think the narrative has started to shift a little bit where the enthusiasm behind the conversations that we're all having, whoever it is in this thing, the enthusiasm is so great and there is no counter enthusiasm. Like, where are all the versions of us on the other side of this?
On the right?
No, I don't even mean on the right. Like the people that really are selling identity politics at a really great way at a comedy level who have a huge podcast and like where is that intellectual set of people? Where's the Sam Harris of the other side of this or that have real followings? They don't exist. And that's partly why the hysteria has been ramped up. They can't believe that out of nowhere, just because of all of our just wherewithal and desire to do what we think is right or what makes us happy or whatever the hell you want to call it, they can't believe we all freaking created something.
Well,
and they hate
I'm
creation
weirded out
too.
that we're all in a...
Suddenly, the guy who once joked about not being smart enough to run anything was out here influencing national decisions. Even some of his closest friends, like Bill Burr, hinted that Joe, along with JRE regulars like Andrew Schultz and Tion, might have helped kick off something dangerous without realizing it. That's how heavy his influence had gotten. When Joe backed the Red Team, it was big enough to hit mainstream news like it was an official endorsement from a political powerhouse. But now, it really looks like he regrets it, especially because of the harsh anti-immigration stance he helped support, a stance he now seems uncomfortable with.
Having a bunch of people that have different ideologies but yet share this common theme of wanting to have real honest communication and honest conversations and try to figure out, instead of looking at things from an ideological perspective, look at things from an honest, objective point and try to see the way the other people view things.
Open-hearted, not trying to destroy each other.
Yeah.
Little by little, Joe's been sliding back toward the beliefs he held before he started aligning himself with the right, almost like he wants to distance himself from that whole chapter. Whatever the truth is, one thing's obvious. That short-lived moment where Joe Rogan mattered in national politics came and went in a flash, and it's not coming back. Joe Rogan is to politics what Joe Rogan is to comedy, and that says a lot. And honestly, we gotta talk about how the podcast isn't the only thing dragging his reputation down. What he's done to his first love, stand-up, has taken just as much shine off his name, because even though he sees himself as comedy's proud protector, plenty of people think Joe Rogan actually wrecked stand-up as we know it. For years, Joe was a key figure in the comedy world, first dominating the LA scene, then bouncing to Austin and building his own comedy ecosystem there. A bunch of comics followed him, hoping Austin would become the new comedy capital. But even with all that influence, a lot of fans have long believed that Joe Rogan just isn't as funny as he thinks he is. People say stuff like, Rogan's got plenty of talents, but stand-up ain't one of them. Even the comics who respect him as a gatekeeper, someone who can change your whole career with one shout-out, still clown him for his weak delivery and stiff punchlines, and when his own friends roasted him, you could see the sting in his eyes clear as day. But these days, Joe doesn't have to stress about bombing on stage, because he's always performing in front of a friendly, home court crowd. Instead of grinding at random clubs to sharpen his material like he used to, Rogan dropped some of that podcast cash and built his own comedy fortress in Austin.
Home Depot. And we're going to arrest all the people at Home Depot. We're going to go to construction sites and we're going to just like tackle people at constructions. I don't think anybody would have signed up for that. They said we're going to get rid of the criminals and the gang members first, right? And now we're seeing like Home Depots get raided. Like that's crazy. Big dinner together, like a bunch of dorks, and we all got together and we're like this little club. And it's kind of fun, and we're going to do it again. And we're bringing more people in too. We're bringing more people into the dork web.
Good.
And some people are resentful.
The comedy mothership. On the venue's website, it's described as fulfilling Joe Rogan's dream of creating a comedy community in Austin that would attract comics from across the globe. And to be fair, the mothership has brought in some legendary performers. The place has turned into one of the hottest comedy spots in the entire country, pulling in major talent night after night. But while the venue is thriving, the whispers about Rogan's actual stand-up skills keep getting louder. And that shadow follows him every time he touches a mic. But everything at the comedy mothership isn't as shiny as it looks. Behind the bright lights and packed crowds, people say there's a shadow hanging over the place. A type of pressure and weird energy nobody wants to speak on out loud. Some folks swear they feel joy in my heart every time I go there, but others can sense something off the moment they walk inside. The mothership brands itself as the home of this new, post-cancel culture, comedy wave. A spot where comics can supposedly say whatever they want without fear. But even people deep in the Austin scene are admitting that the material has gotten predictable. The opposite of bold, the opposite of fresh. It's become the same recycled topics over and over again, and the edge just isn't cutting anymore.
In the eyes of the law is worth more.
How strange is it that we put like a monetary value on actual life itself? Wow. It's just such a strange concept.
Yeah.
Did you see that guy accidentally hit that moose with his car?
No.
Holy shit. Jamie, pull that video up.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
A bunch of the crew around Joe keeps aiming their jokes at the same groups, the same themes, the same taboo words. And because of that, they've turned themselves into punchlines among other comedians who've quietly backed away from the whole movement. Instead of coming off rebellious, it's coming off repetitive, like everyone's reading from the same tired script about free speech. What used to look like a diverse, creative scene is slowly turning into one big hive mind, and fans are starting to feel the cringe. A lot of people are saying these comics are trying to cosplay what the stand-up scene used to be like in the late 90s and early 2000s, except without the jokes, without the timing, without the spark that made those legends so special. And it's not just critics on the outside talking. Even audience members who've been to the shows have walked out disappointed. One person said, "I went to Joe Rogan's comedy mothership this weekend, and it was the worst night of comedy I have ever experienced in my life." They said there were 7 performers, and each one kept leaning on the same edgy language over and over. Not clever, not creative, just forced shock with no punchline. To a lot of longtime fans, it's starting to look less like a revolution, and more like a room full of people trying way too hard. The wildest part is that this wasn't just one comic pushing the envelope. It was the whole night. Every performer leaned on the same routine, and the edgy angle was their entire act. They kept reminding the crowd that everyone's phones were locked up, hinting that since nothing could be recorded, we might as well laugh and go along with their attitude that anyone who isn't a straight white man is somehow less than. It was a strange vibe from the jump. At one point, a comedian literally said, "Make some noise if we hate trans people."
Problem is, like, where you're kind of in a bit of a bind is that all this human attention has been placed upon you, and you have to wrestle with your identity because people have decided you're one of the magnifying glasses focusing this beam of attention into the world. And so within that is all this room for disaster. It's like those people and what are they up to? And then you start thinking, see, this is what I think about if I were you. Then you start thinking like, man, I've got this podcast that lots of people listen to. Has it ever happened where maybe some really intelligent person has manipulated me in an attempt to get me to disseminate some kind of information out into the world?
Good luck manipulating me, Duncan Trussell. I'm an American.
Such a crazy power that if you're not careful, folks from deep, dark wells of perspective are going to infiltrate.
And a couple folks in the audience actually cheered. That moment alone showed how far things had drifted. This wasn't comedy. It felt more like a TED Talk for people who share facts don't care about your feelings memes and think that counts as deep thinking. For some audience members, it was the worst comedy night they had ever sat through. Because of this shift into what many consider real hack territory, Joe's whole circle has been getting reassessed. People are side-eyeing names like Brian Callen, Tony Hinchcliffe, and Brendan Schaub, wondering if they've all fallen off creatively. Callen's latest special is a perfect example. He filmed it at the Comedy Mothership, hoping it would be a comeback moment, but almost every joke landed flat. Whether he was trying to sound profound or repeating the same old talking points, the crowd just wasn't rocking with it. Joe and Callan really thought this special would be a major win for their crew, especially during a wave of bad press. But after 2 weeks, the video hasn't even hit 200,000 views, and that's with the full Rogan engine behind it. Those numbers should have been way higher, and the drop-off shows just how much Joe's former king-making power has faded. Now Callan's out here spiraling in public, stressing over how badly the special was received. He's even started questioning his whole career and blaming it all on modern attention spans, saying stuff like, because my feelings are, as he tries to explain the flop. It's tough to watch, but it shows how shaken he is.
See this every time it comes across my feed. I'm just going to send it to them. What you see when you see a bot farm. So there's bot farms that have essentially an unlimited number of social media profiles, and they just go after whatever subject it is. And all they're trying to do is get people to hate each other. And this is a bot creepy aspect of AI that was exposed fairly recently. Some accounts got suspended because they realized that the CCP was using ChatGPT to run these kind of bot farms. If we don't get our ideas across, if we don't promote our ideas, then the other side wins in this fever of war, of like a culture war. And a giant percentage of it is being manipulated by these overseas bots. Like I tweet this every time it comes across my feed. I'm just going to send it to them.
And because some of the Rogan Sphere comedians are feeling the fallout of being tied to the mothership, a few are quietly backing away. They're not announcing it loudly, but the distance is there. One example is Andrew Santino. He's been making moves to subtly separate himself from the whole crew, keeping things friendly while clearly carving out his own path. It didn't take long before the whole thing became a running joke, and not in Joe's favor. Even comedians like Shane Gillis and Matt McCusker, people who used to be cool with him, have started cracking jokes at his expense, clowning the situation like it's open season. And while that's happening, old rivals like Mark Maron are speaking out again, saying Joe's done real damage to the art form they care so deeply about. But instead of taking any of this as a wake-up call, Joe has been spiraling and brushing everything off as jealousy, acting like nobody has any valid criticism at all. He keeps playing it off like, get it, he's sad. He wants other people to hurt, making it seem like his critics are just bitter. But the public isn't buying that explanation anymore. Their view lines up way more with Mark Maron and the comics calling him out. People are jumping off what they see as a sinking ship, and ironically, they're realizing their lives and careers get better the second they step away from the Rogan orbit. Meanwhile, Joe's sitting at one of the lowest points he's hit in years, and honestly, he doesn't have anyone to blame but himself. His podcast used to be a place where he listened, learned, and let the conversations evolve naturally. Now it feels like he's pushing an agenda and trying to shape the world instead of entertaining it. That shift cost him everything that made him unique. And now, he's even getting slammed for repeating misinformation about measles, dropping takes that made absolutely no sense. People were quoting him saying stuff like, measles along, that was chickenpox, followed by responses like, measles can and is an ender, you are so dumb. Those clips spread fast, and they made him look out of touch in a way that's hard to bounce back from. All of this has pushed him down from the top of the mountain. Shows like Midas Touch are now beating him by over 698,000 downloads, which would have been unthinkable a couple years ago. Recent JRE episodes are pulling around 3.1 million downloads, a massive 41% drop across the board. For someone once seen as untouchable, those numbers are serious warning signs. Now, to be fair, Rogan still has a huge audience in both podcasting and comedy, so calling it over would be a stretch. But if he doesn't make a major shift soon, those days when he ran the culture might come to a permanent end. So let me know what you think in the comments. Is Joe Rogan done for real this time, or can he bounce back again? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you on the next one.